Cool. So does my screen look good?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a bit early for those of us on the West Coast. Luckily, I'm based in New York, so it's at a slightly more convenient time for myself. And good afternoon and good evening to those joining us from other parts of the world. My name is Abhinav, and I'm the lead PM for everything related to AI for Azure Firewall. And I'm super excited to be here today to talk to you about our integration in Microsoft Copilot for security. So with that said, let's jump right in. So, obviously we at Microsoft are convinced of the value of Copilot and generative AI, which is why we have built Copilot for security amongst many other Copilots. But I'd like to give you a little bit more context on kind of what motivated us to build something like this for security specifically, but also for Azure Firewall. Right. So when you look at the security space today, security analysts are dealing with complex and increasingly fragmented tool sets that are not making their job that much easier when defending against increasingly sophisticated attacks. Attackers are starting to be better funded, use AI and other advanced techniques as part of their own attacks. And the increasing volume of threat data to analyze, combined with the talent shortages in the cybersecurity industry, don't really help with this problem. But we think we have a solution for you, and that is Microsoft Copilot for security. So when we announced this last year, we set out with one vision, which was to help security and IT teams protect their organizations with the speed and scale that generative AI provides. And Copilot for security is kind of, the first of its kind generative AI assistant that leverages not just all of your Microsoft security tools, but also third-party security tools to help you move faster, strengthen your team's expertise, and better defend your organizations from attacks. And there are kind of four broad themes that we think capture the core value proposition of Copilot for security. And I'd like to kind of tell you a bit about how the Azure Firewall integration addresses these themes. So Azure Firewall, as well as our other network security products, are critical services that many Microsoft Azure customers use to protect their networks and applications from threats and attacks. And these services offer advanced threat protection as well as detection and protection against sophisticated attacks using rich Microsoft threat intelligence and automatic patching against zero-day vulnerabilities. And these systems, naturally being part of a network, process huge volumes of packets, are analyzing signals from numerous resources, and generate vast amounts of logs. And to reason over terabytes of data and cut through the noise to detect threats, analysts spend several hours, if not days, performing lots of manual tasks. And like I said earlier, in addition to the scale of data that they need to work with, there's a real shortage of security expertise. It's difficult to find and train cybersecurity talent, and these staff shortages slow down organizations' ability to respond to security incidents quickly and also proactively better their security posture. But with the Azure Firewall integration and Copilot for security, you can now empower your analysts to triage and investigate hyperscale data sets seamlessly, to find detailed, actionable insights and solutions at machine speeds using a natural language interface that requires no additional training. Copilot automates a lot of manual tasks, and so it kind of helps upskill your tier 1 and tier 2 analysts to perform tasks that would otherwise be reserved for more experienced tier 3 or tier 4 professionals. And this helps you redirect your expert staff to some of the hardest challenges, thereby helping elevate the proficiency of your entire team. Copilot can also translate threat insights and investigations into quick and easy natural language summaries that you can use to share information quickly with colleagues or inform leadership about which threats you'd like to prioritize defending against. And this kind of improvement in organizational efficiency that Copilot helps you gain by summarizing vast data signals to generate key insights, helps you outpace adversaries, ideally in a matter of minutes instead of hours or days. And so broadly, when we look at Copilot, everything we're doing with Copilot are capabilities that fall under one of these four themes, and really are helping with improving the speed at which you're able to respond to incidents, making things easier because of the natural language interface, helping you catch what others miss because Copilot can perform analysis on complex data, and then helping upskill your teams to do better despite the cybersecurity talent shortage. And our design behind Copilot for Security is not just taking the most advanced generative AI and large language models from OpenAI and rolling with it. Yes, because of our really close partnership with OpenAI, we do have access to some of the most advanced models, but we also have a huge advantage because of everything that Microsoft brings to the table. Our experience with hyperscale infrastructure, the security-specific AI orchestrator that we've built into Copilot, Microsoft's evergreen threat intelligence that's informed by over 65 trillion signals on a daily basis, and a ton of cybersecurity specific skills and capabilities that we've built into Copilot. So as you can see, it's much more than just the large language model, and that's kind of the big advantage that Microsoft brings with this product. Is it's kind of taking the best of both worlds, the best of AI from leading companies like OpenAI, but also adding the Microsoft advantage into every piece of the product. So the Copilot for Security product itself, right? It's not just adding new capabilities and changing how security teams work, but it's also changing how these capabilities are actually experienced. So Copilot for Security can be experienced in two different ways, what we are calling the standalone experience and then embedded experiences. So the standalone experience is sort of this, it's a brand new portal for Copilot for Security. And you can think of it as like a ChatGPT-like environment where you can chat with Copilot to get the information you need, and it kind of helps you gain a broader context by bringing together all of Microsoft security into one single portal, right? So it helps with cross-product guidance, and you don't need to keep jumping between different portals in order to get information from all the Microsoft security products that you have in your environment. But in addition to that, we also have what we're calling the embedded experiences, which are sort of part of your natural workflow today, right? So if you're using Entra or Intune or Sentinel, Copilot is embedded directly into those products, and it provides you with helpful insights as part of your existing workflow. So it's even easier. You don't even need to learn to use a new portal or switch between portals. It's part of the way you operate and use our security products today. So what are all the products that are part of Copilot for Security? So Copilot for Security itself is now GA, and it works with several Microsoft products. The Azure Firewall integration was announced at the RSA conference on May 7th, just about a month ago, and then it was launched to public preview at Microsoft Build about 2 weeks ago. And for now, the firewall integrations with Copilot for Security will exist on the standalone portal, right? And with the standalone portal experience, we're driving towards specific pieces of value that we learned we needed to deliver based on feedback from early customers. And we're actively working on bringing these experiences into the Azure portal, so it's part of the way you use Firewall in your day-to-day already. But for now, what we have is going to live in that brand new standalone portal, and I'll be jumping into a demo, a live demo of this, and so you'll get a better look at how that works in a second. So Azure Firewall intercepts and blocks malicious traffic using the IDPS feature today, as I'm sure you're all aware. And IDPS is limited to the premium SKU firewall. So everything we've built with Copilot is meant to work with IDPS, and so by virtue of that, it only works with the premium SKU firewall today. However, we have several additional features on our roadmap that are going to expand this functionality across all firewall SKUs in the near future. But getting back to IDPS, today, when analysts need to perform a deeper investigation of any of the threats that are identified by IDPS, they need to do this manually. And this is a non-trivial and time-consuming task. And we have 4 distinct capabilities in the Copilot for Security standalone experience that help you perform advanced investigations of the threats that are identified by IDPS with the speed and scale of AI. So with that said, I've been talking a lot and giving a lot of information about why this needs to exist and what it is, but let's kind of jump right into a demo, and I'm going to switch sharing screens, so you may see like a momentary interruption, but I'll be back in a second. Okay, cool. Just making sure that you're able to see the browser window now.
Yes, all good.
Awesome. Cool. So this is the Copilot for Security standalone portal experience. As you can see, it's probably reminiscent of other large language model chat experiences you've seen, both from Microsoft, from OpenAI, from some of our other competitors. And so on this portal, you can look at the various plugins and products that are integrated with Copilot. And obviously, I see Firewall here. You just have to turn it on, and then you're pretty much good to go. You can start asking questions right away. And so let's start off by. Okay, I think I need to reload this page. So once again, pardon the momentary interruption, but I'll be back in a second. Checking once more, you guys are able to see the screen again?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So we can kind of just start off by asking Copilot if a specific firewall has seen any malicious traffic recently, and this is one of the many cool capabilities of Copilot is that it kind of understands things in a way that a human does. So for instance, even if you don't recall the exact name of the firewall and you only provide a name that's like somewhat similar, so in this case we said has this Woodgrove firewall seen any malicious traffic, Copilot say, hey, I couldn't find a firewall with this exact name, but I did find a few firewalls that partially matched what you were looking for. And so it gives you that information. And one cool thing I'd like to highlight about Copilot for Security is some of the things it does to encourage trust in the responses that it's generating. So as you can see here, every time it processes a response, it breaks down how it actually found a response to your question, along with these green check marks to indicate that Copilot is confident in what it did. So you can say it says it chose the Azure Firewall integration. And then you were asking about malicious traffic, and it says it found the top IDPS signature hits, and then it gave you a response. And so it breaks down kind of how it approached your question and how it found an answer. You can also click down on these drop downs, which if there's more information to be provided, it will explain kind of how it decided to choose that specific plugin or how it chose to prepare your response. And these messages are very useful when it actually fails to choose the right plugin, right? Like, let's say it doesn't choose the firewall plugin and it chooses a different plugin, or it's not able to choose a plugin at all. Those are situations where the error messages displayed here will be more descriptive, and you'll either see a question mark in yellow or a cross mark in red that indicates that it wasn't able to successfully get you your answer. And so this is kind of meant to inspire confidence against like hallucinations and other sort of things you may be concerned about in terms of the accuracy of the responses generated by Copilot. Of course, even when everything is green, we still have a disclaimer at the bottom that says AI generated content may be incorrect. Check it for accuracy, which is true today and will probably be true for the foreseeable future. But at the same time, we have these little elements in the UI that help inspire confidence in the responses that it is generating. So again, another example of kind of being very like conversational with Copilot is like, for the next question, we just said, oh, let's use the third firewall, right? And even though these bullet points were not numbered, it knows that like on the display, the third firewall is firewall Woodgrove VNet 2, and that's exactly the firewall that it uses to answer your question. And again, here we didn't need to reiterate the question. It knows that we actually wanted to look at the malicious traffic, and so it goes and it gets that information. And the first step in any kind of attack investigation is to pick a firewall and look at the threats it's intercepted, right? So we did that today, and today analysts would have to spend a lot of time writing custom queries or navigating through several manual steps to retrieve this information from a log analytics workspace. And with Copilot, you just need to ask for it, and it shows you the information you want. And so by default, Copilot kind of shows you the top 5 threats from the last 24 hours. So it tells you these are the signatures, these are the number of hits, and these were. It gives you a short description of the kinds of attacks that it found. And if you'd like to look for threats beyond what you just saw, you can say, okay, these are only the top 5 threats from the past day, but let's look at the top 25 threats from the past month instead, right? And the cool thing is you can also ask it to say format the information as a table so that it's a bit easier to read and look at, right? So it summarizes the information as a table. You can expand the table to get more information, and then you can also obviously export to Excel if you want to share it with a colleague or collaborate on it easily. And so if we look at these attacks, we see that, okay, now that we've expanded our search space a bit, we see that there's this signature that's actually associated with the CVE. And yes, the firewall successfully dropped the traffic, but there's over 6,000 flows of this in the past month, right? So maybe you just want to try and understand a bit better about the CVE. Why is it malicious? What is the kind of attack that your environment is seeing? And so you can just ask for that information. Basically, hey, tell me more about this CVE, right? And so Copilot will produce a pretty concise, summarized response that tells you about the CVE, and it also links to an article in Microsoft's Threat Intelligence database to give you more information. And so you can obviously refer to the article if you wanted more information, but at the same time, you can also just ask a follow-up question, and since Copilot anyway has access to the article, it'll be able to pull whatever information you want. So in this case, we say, okay, when was this attack published and what is its CVSS3 score? How much of a threat is it to my systems, right? So it tells you when the attack was published. It pulls out the CVSS string and explains exactly what that means. It also explains the nature of the attack. So it says, okay, it allows remote attackers to bypass authentication on affected installations of Papercut. And it says authentication is not required to exploit this vulnerability. And it also kind of gives you a sense of how you want to prioritize this attack, right? So it says, given the high CVSS score and the fact that it allows for remote code execution without requiring user interaction or privileges, it poses a significant threat to your systems. So, this is an example of where, okay, this firewall has dropped this attack, but at the same time, it's a pretty malicious attack that is targeting my environment. And so, you're like, okay, there's some pretty high severity attacks targeting me. Maybe there are other ones, right? And so you can just ask Copilot for that information. And the cool thing about Copilot is, it can perform sort of logical analysis on data that it has access to, right? So for example, in this instance, it has access to all of the attack information on this firewall, and it's summarized that information for you. But in addition to what it's summarized in the backend, it's seeing a lot more information about what your firewall is seeing. And so you can ask for it to say, look for other high severity attacks or low severity attacks or attacks of a specific nature. And it's going to be able to extract that information for you. And so in this case, it says, okay, we see that there are these two other high severity attacks. This has 2,600 hits. This has 100 hits. One is an RDP to an external host. And so, again, Copilot tries to be very proactive and on the safer side with its recommendations. So it says, look, these attacks were flagged and handled by your firewall, but it's important to ensure that your systems are, regardless of that, patched against these kinds of vulnerabilities to prevent any potential exploitation, right? And so this is kind of just to show you how it's able to understand context and go back and forth between things. But it's like, even though we started talking about a different thing, I'm like, okay, let's go back to that first attack. And I want you to give me any threat intel articles that you have about this attack, right? And this can be really useful if, you're trying to convince leadership in your organization that this is an attack you should be dedicating resources to defending against, or it's something that requires further investigation. Copilot really helps kickstart that process and make it easier for you to make a case for why this is something that needs to be investigated, right? Because when you're looking at dealing with a vulnerability, that's what you're looking at. You're trying to see, do you need to prioritize it? How important is it? And what's going to be the impact if you didn't protect against it in a timely manner? And now that you're convinced that this is an important attack, it's something to be aware of, and it's something we should be protecting against, you can ask Copilot for recommendations on how you can protect against similar attacks, right? And it's going to give you a mix of information based on the conversation you've had, such as patching against a specific CVE. It's also going to include information about features specific to your firewall based on our documentation, like obviously IDPS. And then it also gives you some generic security guidance, like regularly monitor and analyze your firewall logs and implement strict access control policies. And so these are capabilities that will help with upskilling of more junior analysts, right? So if an analyst has just started on the job or is new and they're in training, using Copilot to perform investigations can also help teach them more about security best practices and how to use firewall and other security products to best secure your organization. Now, you've performed this investigation for a single firewall, right? And for a single threat. But what if you'd like to determine if other firewalls in your environment have seen this threat anywhere else, right? Now, all the work that you perform for a single firewall is something you're gonna have to repeat for other firewalls. And this is another task that is really, really time consuming, because you're gonna have to go run all these Kusto queries and retrieve all this information for every single firewall in your environment. And for larger organizations, even if you had more people, this is largely a pretty manual, time consuming task that you have to do on a repeated basis. But now you can just ask Copilot for that information. So you can just say, hey, did any of my other firewalls in my tenant also see this attack over the past 4 weeks? And Copilot searches across your entire tenant and finds that there's another firewall that also saw this attack over the same time span. And again, this is something I just like to kind of point out about how Copilot works, is it kind of remembers that you've been using 4 weeks as your time span for this investigation, and so it retrieves information from that same time and tells you, okay, we have this other firewall, Workgroup VNet 1, which has 400 hits, and it even gives you the resource ID of the firewall if you want to like jump in and look up this firewall quickly on the Azure portal, or you want to do any other investigation using other tools that you have. And now you're like, okay, we see that the most the most severe attack has been seen elsewhere. But you can ask, hey, what about the attack with the second highest hits on the first firewall? Now, again, this is part of why I put this in the demo, was to show you really how conversational you can be with Copilot, as if you were like talking to a colleague, right? It understands pretty complex instructions in natural language, and this demo is in English, but there's several languages supported, including all of our largest regions. And so if there's a language you're more comfortable in, you can go ahead and talk to Copilot in that language. And that's another example of how it kind of helps upskill and bridge gaps, because training material may not be easily available in other languages, but Copilot can help you with that. Anyway, back to this specific question. We ask about the second highest hits on the first firewall, right? And even you may not remember exactly what that was, but if we go all the way back, we see that the first, so in the prior question, the first firewall was Woodgrove VNet 2. And then if we go to the attack with the second highest hits, we see that the signature ID is 2032081. And that's exactly the signature that it finds the information for. And here it says, okay, there are two other firewalls, not just one other firewall that has also detected this attack. And the frequency of the attack on all these firewalls seems pretty high, right? So this is also probably something you should investigate. And so you're like, okay, this attack seems to be associated with this particular agent. What more could you tell me about it? And here you can see it says, oh, actually, I couldn't find any specific threat intelligence information associated with this agent. And it also explains why, right? It could be because the threat is relatively new, it's not widely reported, or it's simply not in Microsoft's threat intelligence database. And this is an example of to kind of inspire confidence in the fact that Copilot is not going to hallucinate the same way GPT or ChatGPT would, right? When it can't find an answer, it doesn't just generate one because it thinks it needs to answer your question. It actually just tells you that it couldn't find an answer to your question. And so there's a lot of work we put in on the security side to make sure that Copilot is as honest as possible. And if it can't find an answer, it can't find an answer, and it just tells you that directly, right? It doesn't hallucinate as for the vast majority of cases, and it produces truthful responses. At the same time, it also, again, and this is kind of helping with the upskilling piece, is it still provides you with generic information and guidance on how you should handle this, right? So it says, the fact that your firewall has flagged it as potentially bad is concerning. Suspicious user agent could be trying to disguise their traffic as legitimate traffic. And given the high number of hits, it's crucial to investigate this further, right? And it says you might want to consider capturing some of the traffic associated with this user agent for further analysis. And we have a packet capture feature for Azure Firewall that is going to be released soon. This is an example of where it kind of uses information it knows about what Azure Firewall is capable of to guide you in the right direction, even if it can't answer your specific question, right? And so that, I think, is another very cool piece of this in terms of helping upskill workers, help onboard new security analysts to your team, and even for highly skilled professionals, sometimes they need to go and refer to documentation. But those are things that Copilot can help with and really help speed up, because you can just ask Copilot for the information you want, and it's going to be able to give it to you. Anyway, with that said, we're now kind of wrapping up the investigation. So we're like, okay, hey, how would I make sure that my firewalls are using IDPS in the best way to secure my environment? So, again, provide some recommendations from documentation, and you can continue, like I said, continue to ask questions from documentation about various things, right? So now you're like, okay, I have IDPS on a few of my firewalls, but I'm wondering if there are any performance implications from turning it on that I need to be aware of, right? Maybe there are specific firewalls that are that you require extremely high throughput on, and you're worried about IDPS affecting that. And you can see here it actually gives you an accurate answer of like, okay, it can handle up to 10 gigabits per second if you turn IDPS with TLS inspection on. And if you'd like to investigate further, as usual, you're free to ask follow-up questions, but it also links you to the actual Azure or Microsoft Learn documentation that has answers to the question you asked, right? And so it gives you the citations to inspire confidence in the answers it's producing, but it also gives you the citations if you'd want to dig deeper on your own. That's sort of the end of the demo. And so you can say, okay, hey, this was an excellent and very helpful investigation. And can you provide an executive summary of our conversation that's suited to a non-technical audience while preserving context on the threats we discussed? So it provides pretty much what you asked for. And of course, if you're not happy with what it produced, you can always ask for it to switch it up and produce a slightly different response. And so this is very useful if like you need to send an email summarizing something to your colleagues or to your leadership. Copilot can really make this process much easier for you instead of you having to sit down and put this together yourself. And another cool thing you can do is we have this pinboard feature where you can select any number of prompts in your conversation, and then you can hit save to pinboard. And the pinboard generates a more technical summary of everything that you pinned, right? So even if you're having multiple conversations and there are different pieces of those conversations that are all important, you can pin all of them. And this shows you all the conversations that or all the responses you've pinned, and then it generates a summary of all the pinned responses. So this is another example of really the core natural language aspect of Copilot being really powerful. Is it helps you generate these summaries that really speed up the process of getting people on board or conveying information, or even if you're an MSSP and you need to send this information to your customers, this is a really easy way to do that instead of having to spend hours every week manually putting together this information. And then, so that's kind of the end of the demo. I'm going to switch back to the deck for a second to show you one more thing. So again, pardon the interruption in when I switch screens. But yeah, feel free to get your questions ready because I'll be happy to take questions in a few minutes. Just making sure again you're able to see the deck again now.
Yes.
Cool. So the last kind of thing I wanted to highlight about our Copilot integration is this feature called Promptbooks. And you can essentially think of Promptbooks as a series of prompts that you've put together to accomplish a specific security-related task. And any user can rerun these Promptbooks whenever they'd like by simply providing a few pieces of information. And users can also actually configure a logic app to run a prompt book at a regular cadence. And then, for example, in this prompt book, the last one says, prepare a report summarizing this investigation. So you can configure a logic app to take that report and then send it out to an external dashboard or send it out to your team, your customers, whatever use case you'd see being useful. You can do that using a prompt book. And this is an example of a prompt book that I just configured a few minutes before the webinar, where you can so you essentially type out a bunch of questions, you run it in Copilot, just like we did in the demo. And once you are happy with the responses that it produces, you can basically, in the same way that we selected the prompts for the pinboard, you can select the prompts and hit create prompt book, and it will automatically generalize the inputs that would change from person to person, right? So in the actual prompt that I typed into Copilot, I probably said, show me the top 20 threats from the last 2 weeks for firewall, like Woodgrove VNet 2 or whatever. But Copilot automatically recognizes these as possible inputs and separates them out. And then leaves the rest of the prompts kind of as is, because we're investigating the top attack. And so it puts the prompts together, and all you have to do is provide the information in the the 3 inputs, and then you can just hit run, and it's going to run the sequence of prompts. And like I said, you can configure a logic app to do this at a regular cadence if you'd like to get automated reports. And the Copilot platform product itself is coming out with more tools for automation and helping run sort of tasks in the background. And so those are in the future, but for now, you can configure a prompt book yourself, and you can run it using a logic app if you'd like. So yeah, this is another kind of cool way to sort of take the Copilot automation stuff a step further and make it truly like a background process that runs and performs a task for you. So yeah, that brings me to the end of my presentation. You know, the future of technology is here, and users are going to increasingly expect their network security products to be AI enabled. And we think Copilot positions organizations to fully leverage the opportunities presented by this emerging era of generative AI. The Azure Firewall integration that we announced recently and is now in public preview is, you know, it combines Microsoft's expertise in security with state-of-the-art generative AI from OpenAI, and it's packaged together in a solution built with security, privacy, and compliance at its heart to help you defend your organizations better from attackers while keeping your data completely private. You know, none of the data in Copilot is shared with Microsoft, and none of it is used for training our AI models. All your data is completely private, completely isolated to your instance. It's stored in a geolocation of your choice. So if you're in Europe, it is compliant with GDPR, and Microsoft does everything possible to ensure that your data is completely private. And so if there were any concerns about that, I can assure you, Microsoft assures you that you don't need to be worried about it. And we even go so far as when you do file a support ticket, we initially don't see any of the information from your conversation with Copilot until you explicitly give us permission to see it. And so even for support tickets, we don't see any of your information. All your organization's data is completely private. And yeah, hopefully this inspires confidence in sort of taking the leap forward into this new era. And you know, we also look forward to continuing to integrate more of Azure network security into Copilot to make it easier for our customers to be more productive and be able to quickly analyze threats and mitigate vulnerabilities faster than their adversaries. So yeah, that was pretty much what I had. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions now.
Thanks, Abhinav. This was a great, resourceful presentation you shared with our community. So yes, there's just by the way, the links from your deck were also shared here in the chat with the audience for a quick reference. Awesome. So there's lots of questions that came in, and the team was able to answer most of them. There is also a licensing questions that came in, and we provided the link to that. However, there's one concern regarding the licensing question. So it goes like this: at the Microsoft 365 conference, I demoed Security Copilot. When there is only one compute unit, the tool barely works. Microsoft's recommendation is 3 compute at $9K a month. Will there be any license-based models in the future with more reasonable pricing? Per se, would there be any plans to have a light version that allows you to use Copilot inside the security portal, but maybe not have the Copilot for security screen being shown?
So I think there's two parts. So I guess I'll address the first part, which is one compute unit barely provides you with anything. Now I can't. The thing with the compute units is we don't provide a direct mapping between compute units and the number of prompts you can ask, because it greatly varies based on the kinds of questions you ask. The more data that Copilot needs to process in the backend to answer your question, the more of a compute unit it's going to burn. And so for your use cases, if you see and feel like one compute unit is inadequate, then yes, you do have to provision more. And that's part of why we recommend large enterprises to start off by provisioning three compute units. In terms of flexibility with pricing, as of now, we obviously have the provision capacity model, but in the future, we will be launching a true pay-as-you-go model where you should effectively be able to pay for the prompts that you use rather than provisioning capacity using compute units ahead of time. And I don't have an ETA on when you'd be able to see that, but it is definitely something that is being looked into.
Thank you for that. And just to remind you, to remind the audience, considering that this is a public webinar, we do not disclose what is on our roadmap. So for upcoming features and the roadmap plans, you can sign up for our Microsoft Cloud Security Private Community Program, where you can make a difference in helping us shape our products together, as well as provide this valuable feedback. So the link for that has been shared at the very top. The short link is the aka.ms/joinccp. Moving on to the next question. Can it show us the KQL that can be used within Sentinel to generate an alert for these attacks?
So at least for the Azure Firewall capabilities in Copilot today, we don't show you the acoustic query that is being used to retrieve the information. If it's something you'd like to see, then it's definitely something we could support. For example, Azure WAF does actually show you the acoustic query that is being used, and if you remember the three drop downs with the green check marks for Azure WAF, if you click on those, it'll show you the actual acoustic query that's being used. We don't do that for Firewall today, but if it's something that people would like to see, then it's definitely something we can consider adding support for.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to the rest of the unanswered question. Like Copilot today, after end prompts, does it start a new conversation?
It does not. It goes on for as long as you are going to chat with it.
Okay. What if you use a third-party firewall on Azure? How can you integrate?
So that would be up to whichever third-party firewall you're using. So when it comes to Copilot for Security itself, there are several third parties that have already or are in the process of releasing integrations with Copilot for Security. You can look this information up online, but we have a published list of over 100 third-party security companies with whom we are partnering. And so if your third-party firewall is provided by any of these companies, then you can ask them for an integration with Copilot for Security. And if they support that, they should be able to build it. In addition to which, the there is an open plugin model as well that is open to all our customers, and they can build plugins and integrations with Copilot for Security themselves if they want. So if you're interested in that, again, resources are available online on how you can build a custom plugin with Copilot for Security. But if you want to do that, you can do that as well. Or you can ask whichever third-party company you're working with to build that plugin for you.
Thank you, Abhinav. Moving on to the next one, although the topic here is Azure Firewall and the integration with Copilot, but there's a question about if you know if you could explain about Lighthouse and how it's working on Copilot security. Are you aware of that?
I am actually not aware of that. I'm also yeah, so I don't have any details there. So yeah, I don't know, Volan, if there's a way you can take that question and give it to the Copilot folks.
That's fine. Moving on to the next one. Thank you. Does Copilot learn from the users as well?
It does not, because like I said, your data is completely private. And we don't use any of that data for training, for anything really. So as of today, no, Copilot does not learn from your data or from the questions you ask in any way.
Okay, moving on to the next one. So can you add an encryption on the data or use retention settings to know the data gets deleted?
So I am
this
not
is
sure.
Related to the region of choice.
Yep. So I'm not sure about encryption, but in terms of deleting the data, that's completely in your hands. You can go in and delete it if you want. I'm not sure if there's a provision to say, hey, automatically delete data beyond a certain amount of time. But all the data that is stored is all, like, it's completely visible to you. So you can literally go in and delete any of your past sessions, and it's gonna be completely deleted. I am not sure about encryption. I would assume the data is automatically encrypted, but we can take a follow-up for that one.
Okay. There's another question here about the upcoming features, and but I want to remind folks out there that this is a public webinar, so I'll read out the question. Abhinav, maybe you can just answer something in a very generic way if there's anything coming up. So it goes like this: is there any upcoming feature to check security policies and to create and push policy using Promptbook?
That's a valid ask, and it's something we'll definitely look into.
Great. And this is the last one, unless there's more coming. We have 8 more minutes before we end the call. What process does Microsoft use to block their access from their customer data? And the follow-up question is, how can a customer be 100% certain you have no access without their permission?
I'm not sure what specific process we use, and in terms of being 100% certain, when you sign up to use Copilot for Security, these are guarantees that are provided to you on behalf of Microsoft, and so it's a guarantee that Microsoft provides. And so if you trust Microsoft, you can trust the guarantee. And obviously, if it's a guarantee we provide, it means we will be held to it. And so if you find any information that deviates from the official agreements that we provide, then you can pursue compensation in whatever form you deem appropriate. But these are guarantees from Microsoft. And if you look at the terms and conditions when you sign up for Copilot for Security, you'll see the specific details there. And so I think that's where I would look.
Okay. Thank you, Abhinav. So that was the last question, and I want to thank you again for being our guest today and for sharing this great information with our community. But also, I would like to thank our SMEs in the background here who helped us with answering the truckload of questions that came in here. So thank you for that. And to all the listeners still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desires to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. We believe that together we can make a global impact, so please join us at aka.ms/security community. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars such as this one we just had, as well as events and other announcements. Also, please take a minute submitting your feedback, the webinar feedback that is, that helps us a lot to improve or change things, and you can do that at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. For those of you who may have additional questions on the topic we just covered or other product-related questions, please feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space, aka.ms/ANS community. A sample question can be the one with a lighthouse that we did not have an answer today, but you can raise it there, and we have SMEs looking over these discussion spaces who could help you. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.